To order the December 18th, 2017 regular meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. I ask that we please silence our cell phones and electronic devices. Please join me for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mrs. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates.
Present.
Ms. Bolton.
Here.
Mrs. Hoffman.
Here.
Ms. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Monero. Mr. Timmons.
Here.
President Copeland Dansby.
I need a motion to approve the following minutes. Special meeting November 16th, 2017. It is a revised report. The special meeting on December 4th, 2017, and the regular meeting on December 4th, 2017.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved as presented. We have several committee reports, and we'll start with Ms. Jones. As chair of the Policy Committee, please present the December 4th, 2017 revised Policy Committee meeting report.
Yes, thank you. Again, you have your revised copies in front of you, and the report, the presentation of the minutes will be short. Most of the items on here are ongoing discussions, and will continue at least through the first part of the year. I think the one area of interest to the board is around the fan code of conduct, which in which we had Josh Harden come and present to us about the work that's being done to address fan conduct during all extracurricular activities. And he is also going to be coming back to us with more information, particularly as it relates to some of the things that are going on in the elementary school. So we look forward to his work. Also, I wanted to share a huge achievement that's in the minutes, and it had to do with our the policy on student voice in decision-making, and we are very happy about that. So I will present the minutes as written and currently as revised.
Thank you.
Good.
Are there questions or comments?
Thank you. Just, and perhaps I'll limit this if I could. Appreciate all the work that's gone into it, especially as it pertains to the, the enrollment piece. Just a question, and I think the minutes kind of reflect it, but the enrollment regarding neighborhood schools and the issue of homelessness and the requirement, could the committee members help me understand the law, and if the children are allowed to go and we need to provide for them to go in their home school?
Yes, that is the McKinney-Vento Act,
Right.
which states very clearly that they can stay in their home, their neighborhood school. And I think it's worth mentioning that the principals that we invited here to give their perspective were very clear on the expectation of the McKinney-Vento Act, and that they really work hard with families and with Project Connect, if they're involved with Project Connect, to make sure that the student has the greatest opportunity for stability. And that, in most cases, is the neighborhood school. And if it's believed or the parent desires a school somewhere else, they also work with that parent around that. But the goal is to ensure stability and the expectations of the law.
That's good. And want to be sure that we do what's required of us and do it well. That's good. So, but parents can request to go to other schools?
That is my understanding, is that they can,
So
yes.
they can request, and then
Yes.
once they request, that becomes the home school,
Yes.
rather than necessarily their address in the boundary?
Well, the address is questionable, because if they're homeless.
Right, I got
yes.
that.
So it is, and I don't know if Daniel is here to explain, but in the McKinney-Vento Act, it does state specifically, and it says here, attending the school of origin, or enroll in any public school that non-homeless students who live in the same attendance area are eligible to attend. So they can attend in their home school where perhaps their previous address was, just to give you an example. Or they can attend out of their neighborhood school, given that they have no address. Does that make sense?
They can choose.
Yes.
All right, but if you have an address and you're not homeless, if you're gonna choose a neighborhood school, you have to be within those boundaries. But if you're homeless,
The McKinney-Vento
choose.
Act, yes,
Okay.
it's a little bit different expectation and
okay,
requirement,
it's
yes.
it's a different class of.
Right.
Yeah, okay. And then, on the fan conduct stuff, as you proceed with that, some of that starts to be within what student achievement.
I know.
So
There is
we're
some
just gonna
overlap.
kind of throw up a little fence there about that, so that he's not having to report to a couple of different committees, but it's great work. The other thing, the last one on the curriculum piece, that is still a live discussion in student achievement. You mentioned here, the committee agrees that this subject has been resolved in its original purpose. That means that for policy it's done,
Yes.
but not for student achievement.
Right,
Thank
and
you.
the policy does acknowledge and recognize that there was some overlap in these conversations. The work in the policy committee is related to, for example, with the curriculum piece, was related to the discussion that was had on the creation of high-quality schools. And so, as you can see on here, I mean, we're pretty much done with that conversation, recognizing that it's also being talked about in student achievement from this standpoint of curriculum and textbook adoption. And what happened is our general counsel put that on as other business just to inform us that it was part of student achievement's discussion.
Great, and it will continue to be.
Yes.
Well, I don't know. In January, I think it will still be, but who knows? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for those questions. I also want to engage in the conversation related to the homeless group of students in their home school. So having worked with this population for many, many years, it is the intent of organizations like Project Connect to keep the child in the school that they are currently enrolled. So if a child lives across town and then they're homeless and they're residing in Anna Louise Inn, right near us, there are expenses for transporting that child clear across town, and rightfully so. I heard Ms. Jones, as chair, mention that the greatest success is more likely to happen for the student if they can remain where they have some ties to family and friends and that kind of thing in their home school. I will bring up during assignments, though, I'm like Ms. Bolton, I might like a little more clarification on choosing different, because I'm not clear on that.
And I neglected to mention that both the principals, we invited Angela Cook-Frazier from Kilgore and Belinda Tubbs-Wallace from Rockdale to come and offer some insight from their perspectives of two fairly different schools where they experience this issue. And I think that one of the things that they specifically asked for is guidance, and some very clear guidance around the policy and the expectation around McKinney-Vento. And so we are going to follow up and continue that discussion and do what we can to provide that clarity to not only school personnel, but to parents of
Yeah, and to take that a step further, if there's an opportunity, even related to the board's policy, that we can help support children remain in their home school. I don't know if we want to call it neighborhood school. I think that's where the confusion comes in. I guess we could call it, it's the school where they have already spent their time.
Right, and McKinney-Vento refers to it as their home school.
Absolutely.
That's correct.
So if
Yeah.
there's a way for us to support that, that'd be great. I mean, we even have new administration over Project Connect, and so it may be time to hear from Project Connect again, as we do every year or something like that. So I didn't want to just breeze by that, because that's pretty intricate, and having come face to face with that more often than not, it's a very significant issue with families.
And this is an ongoing discussion
Yes,
item for
thank you.
policy.
I appreciate it. You guys are doing great work. Ms. Bolton, as Chair of Student Achievement Committee, please present your December 11th committee meeting report.
Thank you very much. Yes, we'll try to make it as brief as we can. There's a number of topics and I guess complimentary documents also filed with it. We heard from Mary Walsh regarding Partnership for Innovation PI and some of the work that they've been doing with CPS, and particularly now as My Tomorrow begins to branch out more and more over the last couple of years into the career path. So this was part of the focus. Reported back as we are required by protocol regarding OSBA updates from the Capitol Conference. And then also we continue to have discussion regarding the need for a community conversation regarding later starts for our high schools and aiming now for February. So we got an update there and found out about the administration who's working through that, as well as we got some dates that made a little bit clearer and also now know the role that City Council wants to think about playing, and suggested it be on the ACES agenda for this very first of the year meeting with the Education and Entrepreneur Committee. And I just have to see if the committee membership is the same on council, because they start a new thing just like we will be doing in January. Then we heard more discussion and really appreciated the openness of the discussion regarding both the enrollment at Spencer and at Cheviot, as well as some more discussion and great administrative information that we received regarding a new IT platform called Performance Matters, and they'll be reporting back on both of those again. So appreciate the work that they've done, and that's my report.
Are there any questions or comments? Ms. Hoffman, as Chair of the Ad Hoc Board Priorities Committee, please present the December 11th, 2017 committee meeting report.
Sure, and can I present December 13th as well? at the same
Yes.
time? Okay, great. So we met twice to address the 3 assignments from the board that came out of our November board retreat. So we were asked to draft an opening statement to our protocol and bylaws explaining the intent of the protocol and bylaws, and that was one assignment. And then another assignment was to also review the role and responsibilities part of our protocol and bylaws and discuss procedures for how to hold each other accountable. And so you'll see in our resolutions tonight, we've drafted both of those things and are asking for board approval. And then we were also asked to come up with an agenda, a time, a facilitator, all of that stuff for our January retreat, and we have done all of that as well. And so we can see all of that. So all 3 of our assignments have been closed out for the ad hoc committee for the year.
You rock.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Ms. Hoffman? We need a voice vote to accept the committee meeting reports as written. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Excellent. We have 2 presentations tonight. Our first presentation is related to an alcohol waiver for the SCPA fund. Ms. Bretta Cooper from Mayorson is present with us, and she's going to come down and share some information.
Good evening. Thank you all for allowing us to come. Yeah, so my name is Bretta Cooper. I'm Executive Vice President of the Mayerson Foundation. This is Larry Bergman, and I am here tonight on behalf of the SCPA. I'm chairman of the SCPA Fund, and we are asking for use of the building and alcohol waivers for 2 separate events. The first one is Monday, January 22nd, and it would be to host a reception and performance by an Elvis impersonator named Dean Z. The event is being presented by Larry Bergman and is expected to raise over $80,000 to support the school. So we're very grateful for him and his help with that. The second will be on Saturday, June 2nd, to celebrate and launch the new National SCPA Alumni Association, as well as to honor Jack Loizo. That will be a fundraising dinner and a performance at the school. Proceeds of that event will support the SCPA as well as the newly forming Alumni Association. Diane Dunkelman and Brett Stover are the co-chairs for that event, so we're really excited about that. So as I said, for both of those events, we are requesting an alcohol waiver. We have obtained special liability insurance for both of those events. The students will not be on campus at the time of the events. However, we would like to request, if possible, that up to 12 students be available to perform. We will make sure that they are chaperoned and escorted appropriately, only in the and only permitted either on stage or backstage. So we think that that will be a really important part of the event so that we can really showcase what the school is all about. So we hope that that gives you some information about the events. I think Larry wanted to say a couple words.
I'd like other people speak.
Oh, okay.
But I want to thank you. For the last few years, I've been involved trying to help raise funds, and the funds were going to the school system. And this year we had a great response. And Dean Z doesn't just do Elvis. He also, he's part of the Legends of Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
So he does all sorts of acts. And what's going to be special this year is Bill Medley brought him for us. Bill Medley's the Righteous Brothers. And he told me that he's going to come also. So he'll be at the show. And with that, I have tickets for you all. Hopefully everyone will go, and we'd love for you to be there. It's worth seeing. I hope to continue it for the years ahead.
Very nice. Thank you.
Here's the board. Superintendent.
Do board members have any questions or comments?
Great.
And I'm a product of Cincinnati Public Schools.
Nice.
Yeah.
So.
We love to hear that.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Greta. Have a wonderful day. Our next presentation will be Cincinnati Preschool Promise and Cincinnati Public Schools joint presentation. Superintendent, do you want to key this up, or?
Well, as you know, we have been working very hard over the last several months with Preschool Promise, and our Assistant Superintendent, Cheryl Brodnex, has been working hard with Preschool Promise for a couple of years now. So we're very happy to be able to do a joint presentation with Stephanie Word as well as Cheryl Brodnex.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. So it's actually really fitting. It's the last board meeting of 2017, so it's a great time for Stephanie and I to reflect back on some of the work, as well as fill you in on next steps as well. We would be remiss if we didn't actually give another great big thank you for issue 44, because without that, this work obviously would not be happening. We were able to expand some preschool seats, both within CPS and the community providers. In fact, Cincinnati Public Schools has increased over 300 seats, and Cincinnati Preschool Promise has increased 174 seats, but keep in mind that's only since July 1st. We have more access to high-quality programs within the CPS district. In fact, we also see some neighborhoods and regions here, such as Leap and Carthage, but we are working also to close those quality gap areas, such as Walnut Hills. And finally, thanks to those who have supported this, we have been able to meet more needs of our families, accommodating for the work days and siblings as well. Most of our work is centered around building a stronger partnership. We have a defined action plan and purpose. There is a communication team that meets bi-weekly. There is crossover work to enhance our flow, as you can see there. And probably the thing that has helped quite a bit is the establishment of the Partnership Strategic Leadership Team, and that is meeting monthly. This leadership team has been focused on some key areas that you see displayed here, and we'll be taking you through some of those topics. First up is communication. Joint communication, we are sending out a weekly update, and is provided each week to keep people apprised. and we are working to develop key message points. We realize that there still needs to be more clarity about how this works, both with the expansion of Cincinnati Public Schools and the Cincinnati Preschool Partnership and quality preschool in general. You can see here our next steps. These will be the next big buckets of work, but we still want to work on how to convey to community providers how to access special education services. We understand that's an area that has been brought to our attention as needing more information. And we really do want to provide more of the ongoing media stories, because there is a great deal of success that has been had with this partnership. And we really want to make sure that the public understands all of the good things that are happening as well. Here's enrollment, and Stephanie can do her part because we're really excited that over 1,000 children are already being served. 623 of those are within Cincinnati Public right now. 56% are full day, 60% are 4-year-olds, and 40% are 3-year-olds. And you can see we're not too far off when you look at comparisons, except with Cincinnati Preschool Promise.
And I'll just add, as you can see, that we have 461 children who are enrolled in the community-based providers. That includes single-site providers, multi-site providers, and also the parochial schools. The majority of children are 4-year-olds, but as you can see, it's just a slight margin between the 4-year-olds and the 3-year-olds, and the vast majority are full-time. And back to Assistant Superintendent's comments about meeting the needs of working families, we do believe that this is a reflection of our meeting that need.
Next steps, obviously, we want to work on better understanding capacities and projections, because we will be planning for next year. Talking about maintenance of effort, which is really the money that's already flowing for preschool and how we continue to maximize those dollars, because Cincinnati Preschool Promise dollars are last dollars in. And obviously wanting to collaborate as much as we can to ensure that families are getting the ability to enroll in quality programs. Data and evaluation.
So we have been working with the Crane Center at The Ohio State University for the last month and a half to begin to prepare the story that we want to tell the community about the investment that they've made in preschool. Crane was selected through a competitive process, an RFP process that took quite a bit of time. It included CPP board members and staff. And was issued to about 15 different providers across the country. Went through 2 rounds because the first round came in with bids that were way over our budget. And so in the second round, we got more realistic figures and ended up contracting with Crane, largely because of their experience working with the state assessments as well as with public school districts. Their role is to measure the influence of the tuition assistance on the families who've received it, also to determine how our efforts have influenced kindergarten readiness for the children that go into kindergarten. They'll be doing stakeholder surveys of parents and providers, directors of programs, to understand how they're using the resources that they've been given, as well as how those resources have moved the programs into quality or allowed them to maintain quality. And then the overall impact of the quality improvement investment. Our goal is to have more of the non-rated programs, or those that are rated a 1 or a 2, move into the 3, 4, or 5-star category, so that there's more access to quality programs across the district.
And here you see the next steps.
And so we'll be conducting an evaluation that really at this point looks at 2 different ways of providing preschool. We've got the district's model, as well as what's being provided in the community-based programs, different assessments in place. Over time, that may become less different and more aligned. But for where we are now, given that we're straight out of the gate, we're going to have them tell us the story as they see it and how the data comes back, given what we have in place today. And then look at, over time, how we can collect more common data points, and where we can even now collect common data points, evaluate those, and then where they're different, tell that story as well.
Special education, Cincinnati Preschool Promise agreed to the $530,000 of the $880,000 budgeted. That money right now is funding for diagnostic teams that do conduct evaluation for students with suspected disabilities in all expansion seats, as well as teachers that provide services for those that may need them. And we have also offered one training session, which was provided by a Cincinnati public school teacher to community providers, which was really our first test to see how that might work, and us being able to offer some training to a system that they're largely accessing through us. Next steps, we've agreed to provide updates on teams of the servicing, revisit a community-based family support position for Cincinnati Preschool Promise, and a comprehension plan for assisting community providers in accessing district resources. Quality improvement and wage.
So we're very pleased with the number of providers that have signed up to participate as tuition assistance providers, as well as quality improvement. We have 81 providers in total. 40 of them are community-based providers, and as you know, the district's 41. We also have 14 programs that have signed up thus far and are participating with a coach in the quality improvement program, another 5 that are pending approval, and about 12 that are in the pipeline for being approved. There is a process that they have to go through to determine their ability to actually get to a 3, 4, or 5 in a reasonable period of time, but they all have been assigned, the 14 have been assigned a coach. Our coaching collaborative includes 4C for Children, Community Action Agency, Santa Maria Community Services, and also Cincinnati Early Learning Centers. And so they're working with the programs to develop their quality improvement plans, to determine what their needs are in terms of training, curriculum, teacher training, and going back to get their credentials. And then we cost out what that plan might be for each of those programs to determine what the budget will be for each of them, and then monitor their adherence to the plan. We also are very excited about getting the wage survey underway. We are working with the UC Economics Center, and we'll have a survey in the field this week, no matter what it takes, to make sure that we are able to gauge what the current state is for wages for the teachers in the community-based programs. And also the directors. We want to get a sense of what the overall delta is between their current wages and where we want them to be. And then we'll come back with those results and come up with recommendations for next steps. So it's the first of probably a couple of steps that we'll need to take before being able to say how we're going to implement, but it's an important step for us to really understand what the baseline is.
And obviously next steps.
So the quality improvement work is ongoing. As you know, we are, according to the master agreement, we've set a target of increasing the number of seats each year in the community-based programs by 200 seats a year up through the end of the levy. And our goal is to make sure that we're getting enough programs in the pipeline to achieve that. As Cheryl mentioned, we have 174 seats that have been increased thus far since July 1st. Some of them through quality improvement, most of it not. But we're really trying to target those programs who are, again, close to getting to a 3 to make sure that they're a higher priority for receiving the funding. As we think about who's being served by those programs now, we have about 400 children that are being served by the 14 programs that are currently participating. So we see a huge opportunity in increasing access when we get those programs into the rating system.
So in closing here, just a couple of things that we thought really kind of speak to this, and I'll let Stephanie share this one. I actually saw part of this.
Did you? So Tiffany Reeses is the director of the J.C. Wynn Child Development Center. It's over in Walnut Hills. They have 1 star. Very committed director. She was a teacher actually in Cincinnati Public Schools for a number of years, decided to start her own program. Very, very committed to doing what's needed to be done to get to a 3. She's not quite ready to apply for a 3. It'll probably be a few months before she's there, but she really is excited about having the resources and the coach that 4C has assigned to her program, because she relies on having those extra supports and that advice, and someone that she can call when she is in a pinch. So she's very excited. We're excited to have her.
And for us, for children, going to preschool means a lot more than snacks and playtime, and that's kind of one of my favorite quotes. And the rest there, I think, speaks for itself, as well as the joy, because, again, this partnership was about our children. And that concludes our update.
Excellent, thank you. Do board members have any questions or comments? Ms. Bolton?
Yeah, I think it's great. Great presentation. One of the things I think that's important, since this was so historic, much like the FMP was, it's sort of a promises made and promises kept format as you begin to explain it to the community, both the providers, but most particularly the taxpayers and the voters, and just to see where you are on that spectrum, or that continuum, I guess is a better word. That I think that would be very useful for people to see what promises were made in the campaign and in the early stages, and where you've been able to keep them, and to what degree, and how much farther we need to go. I just think it's an easier way to explain it to folks. I'm happy about being kind of together, but I also want to make sure that we keep that variety of choice and approach. There's the value of this, of us not doing it all, is that we could never, first of all, do it all, but we would not be able to offer the variety of choices that a partnership between CPS and the community. So I like as much as we can share, and we've got the fiscal piece to it, and the financial piece, and the board policy piece, but as much of the variety as we can keep, and choices that we can keep, and as long as we can keep a partnership to go into what we first described as preschool deserts, but areas that are challenged. I know that the district's done very well with that, and I know you've made an effort with community providers too, to focus on those targeted areas. Just one last question, I think, but two questions. It is still last dollar in.
Correct.
Is what we've promised to the folks. And then also, the people, the children that are being, or the seats, if you will, that are being subsidized are all in 3-star.
That's
Three-star
correct.
or higher,
Right,
correct.
The quality piece is moving people that are not at 3-star up further, and even some of the 3-stars ultimately to 4 or 5.
Correct.
So, and we're not
Although the
using-
quality improvement work isn't going towards the 3, 4, and 5 programs at this point.
So, and that's not a system we invented to measure ourselves, that's a state
Correct.
effort. And I think people need to understand that too.
Okay.
That it's another standard by which we are being measured, rather than a self-serving standard. I think that would be critical to selling it, but
Yes.
keep up the good work, and it's crucial for all of us.
Any other question?
Also emphasizing there was no template for this, right? Like you all are creating this as we're doing it. And that is pretty phenomenal, that when you look at those results, that over 1,000 kids are being served, over 80 sites, and we have a pipeline of community providers that are going to be able to be built up to 3, 4, and 5 stars, that there's a wage survey already going out. It's pretty impressive, all of the work that you all have done. And I'm saying you two and all of the people who are working with you on this, because it truly is a partnership in order to get this done. And I think to Board Member Bolton's point, because no one of us could have done this alone for the kids in our community. CPS couldn't have done it, private providers couldn't. It really was going to take us working together. So really just thanking you all for having the vision, but not just the vision, but being able to sell it to our community as to why it was so important, and then build it while, I can't even say, I don't even know while doing what, while enrolling kids in it. I mean, it's pretty impressive. So just really thank you, and our community really thanks you for the work you're doing.
Yeah.
Ms. Jones?
Yes, to piggyback on what both Board Member Bolton and Hoffman said, I think the strength is in the partnership. And I can remember in the beginning when there were struggles, as there always is struggles when you're starting something new and historic. And what I'm particularly happy about is, number one, that we're able to stand at this podium together and share this information. And I am hopeful that it will also be shared with CPP's board, this same presentation. And also particularly happy at the progress that we are seeing, particularly in looking at the QI investment piece and the survey, the wage and benefit, because that's been a huge question, and now we're starting to put some pieces in place where we can really take an honest and realistic look at that. So I would like to have a copy of the presentation, but I would encourage us to continue to do this type of presentation. And it's, it's Christmas, it's the holiday break, so we don't have an audience full of, we have an audience, but it's usually packed. But it would be great if we could do something where there are more participants from the public who can hear this, because I think the more we get the message out, the better we'll be.
Ms. Bolton?
Could I double piggyback on both what Member Hoffman and Member Jones said? First to what Ms. Hoffman said, the Assistant Superintendent Broadnex and others for Cincinnati Public and for Preschool Promise actually appeared before the OSBA, Ohio School Boards Association, and presented this plan and what they were doing, and people sat there like, okay, we'll just try to follow it. If you're new to it particularly, it's really hard to follow, but to your point, this is a very different path, because Cleveland presented what they're doing to expand
Very different.
preschool in the northern part of our state, and they had taken a completely different course of action. And we're happy, and so that's good. and it shows the creativity really that you can exercise, and you have to meet the culture that you're in to that point. And I don't think it would be a bad idea at the end of the year to have the year in review presentation, a community presentation, to your point, to show people where we actually are on this and where we still want to go. And I think that would be helpful, even if it's a joint effort on our part, and to make it a big deal. And whatever you do, just as long as the numbers are right and correct, and you don't need to fudge this in any way, shape, or form. The real numbers and the real approach, all good and bad, is enough for a first year accomplishment.
Okay, anything else? Congratulations, you guys. I know from whence we've come.
Yes, you do.
And so I don't need to belabor the issue that we've heard from both, or all three of my colleagues sitting here. So the thing that I really loved you mentioning was how you've been able to alleviate challenges for our public with their work day and for their siblings. And so I remember talking about how challenging it was because we didn't have, care during the hours so people could go to work and so on and so forth. And so there's so many benefits to this. And I was going to mention telling the story over and over again to the public. And when we have that big celebration, if we can have participants who are able to tell their story.
Sure.
in that.
Absolutely.
So then the only other thing that I wanted to mention, although it's been mentioned already, is that wage survey is so huge. And so we know bringing parity to folks who work with our young people in this arena is very, very important. So thank you for launching that. I'm going to personally look forward to working more in depth with you in the new year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Okay. Ms. Bates, tonight there aren't any retirements listed.
No, there aren't.
Okay.
We're holding on to them.
We are, that's a good thing. Does anyone have any kudos? I'll just give one shout out to my colleagues to my left and to my right, and the folks at the end of this table as well, and the folks over there as well. It's just been an amazing year, and so kudos to each and every one of you for serving our students and working side by side with me. I appreciate you, and I look forward to much more work and great results moving forward. So tonight, we have one person who signed up to hear that we're going to hear from the public. And so I'm going to call up a very special person, and I'm going to tell this special person what I'm told on my script here. You have 3 minutes to talk. And so when your 3 minutes are up, a buzzer's going to buzz, and we're going to thank you for your time. But this young lady is Miss Lily Hope Hoffman-Suter, and she is Board Member Hoffman's daughter. She is a CPS student, and she's a special friend of mine, and I'm so happy she's here. Welcome, Miss Lily Hope. Gosh, she's just like a...
Just move to the side so they can see you.
Hello.
Hello.
So, well, I'm going to start by saying thank you to my mom for what she's done for the school board. And I'm so proud of the work that all of the school board has done. They are just all great and amazing school board members. And we have a very wonderful school board. Well, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Yes. I know.
We have several resolutions that we need to move forward tonight. Ms.
Yes.
Bates, will you please present the first resolution for board consideration?
Yes, and I have a resolution amending the Audit Committee Charter.
Oh,
Is that the one?
No.
Oh,
No.
do I have another one?
yes.
Oh, I'll do that one too.
Waiver.
I'll do that, okay. I have a resolution to request a waiver for alcohol use at the School for the Creative and Performing Arts by the SCPA Fund. I recommend adoption of this resolution as printed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments? Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Hoffman?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Timmons?
Aye.
President Copeland Dansby?
Aye. Thank you. Ms. Hoffman, would you please present the next resolution for board consideration?
Sure, I present a resolution revising board policies 0000 bylaws, 0100 definitions, and 0118 role and responsibility of the board.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or comment? I want to thank you for your work in moving this forward. Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates? Aye. Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Hoffman? Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Timmons?
Aye.
President Copeland Dansby?
Aye. Ms. Bates,
Now I have
now you have a resolution. Would you please present it for us?
a resolution amending the Audit Committee Charter. I recommend this resolution be adopted as printed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I want to thank the Finance Committee for taking under consideration some points that I felt very strongly about several months ago, and the amendment to this charter. I think the work that is reflected here is great, and I love how we are intending to notify the community when there are opportunities. And so, is there a second? We did that. Ms. Wagner, please call. Oh, sorry.
Yes, and I just wanted to explain to the public, the amendment that we made to the charter was a clarification on how we appoint members to the audit committee and how they can come to us for appointment and the openness of the
right.
process.
That's right. Mrs. Wagner, please call the roll.
Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton? Aye. Mrs. Hoffman?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Timmons?
Aye.
President Copeland Dansby?
Aye. So we've talked about how we amended that charter, and so Ms. Jones, can you present the next resolution for us related to new members?
Yes, as a result of the Audit Committee Charter acceptance, I present a resolution appointing new Audit Committee members for the board's consideration.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? So for the record, for the public, the four audit committee members being moved forward tonight are Jennifer Kauser,
Counselor.
Christine Fisher, Carol Lawrence, Clarice Warner, and each will serve a term from January 1 of 18 to December 31 of 2020.
Can I also add to this that these members, these candidates came before consideration as a direct result of the changes in the charter, but also for us to, as a district, to be much more aligned with our equity policy. Our previous audit committee, as good as they are, was lacking diversity with women and African Americans and other minorities, and so this really makes it a little more balanced.
Excellent. Have these folks been notified?
I don't know, Lauren.
Thank you. Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Hoffman?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Excuse me. Mr. Timmons?
Aye.
President Copeland Dansby?
Aye. Ms. Bolton, would you please present the next resolution for board consideration?
Sure, thank you. A resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. And I submit and hope for approval. And after the second, I think the treasurer would just need to, again, for the public, explain what this is.
I second.
Yeah, is there a second? Sorry. You did, great. Questions, comments? On to you, Treasurer.
Yeah, so this is an annual process where they have to change the millage rates based on the valuations of the homes. And so that's how they prepare their tax bills that the general public will get in January or any day now to be paid. So on the fixed sum levies, we get the same amount of money, like the $65 million that we just approved. We get the same amount of money for the life of that levy, regardless of what the valuations do, except for new construction. So the millage gets adjusted on individual tax homes so that it collects that $65 million. And so they just need us to verify that we're in agreement with those millage rates.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Hoffman?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Timmons?
Aye.
President Copeland Dansby?
Aye. Ms. Bates, would you please present the next resolution for board consideration?
Yes, I will. I have a resolution recognizing board member Daniel Manera, and I would like to read the full resolution. Whereas in November 2013, Daniel Manera was elected to the Board of Education, serving a total of 4 years from 2014 through 2017. And whereas Mr. Manera's passion for children and community, along with his diverse background as a pastor, community leader, nonprofit director, and citywide youth athletic organizer, allowed him to understand the issues impacting Cincinnati's children and families and enabled him to fulfill his responsibilities as a CPS board member. And whereas his commitment to academic achievement led him to serve from 2014 through 2017 on the Student Achievement Committee, whose major tasks are to review issues and proposals relating to program study, curriculum and instruction, and human resource issues. And whereas Daniel Manera's commitment to community engagement led him to serve on the Partnership and Public Engagement Committee in 2014 and 2015, whose major task was to facilitate communication between the school district and the community, review legislative agenda, and serve as liaison with legislative bodies. And whereas Mr. Manera's skills were recognized by his appointment to the Discipline Committee, Family and Civic Engagement Committee, Cincinnati Recreation Committee, and Ohio School Boards Association Urban Commission. And whereas the children of the Cincinnati Public Schools are the recipients of Daniel Manera's passion for children, commitment to community service, and dedication to quality education for all children. Now therefore be it resolved that the Cincinnati Board of Education expresses its deep appreciation to Daniel Manera for his invaluable contributions to the education of the children of Cincinnati, and be it finally resolved that the Cincinnati Board of Education extends to Daniel Manera warm wishes for continued good health, happiness, and success in his future endeavors. I move that this resolution be adopted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or comments?
I would just add a couple things. One, continuous and consistent voice regarding community learning centers. I know that Mr. Manera is deeply committed to that and very much a part of it, and also a perpetual voice, if you will, about class size and the nature of the facilities and schools on the west side of town. I think that was a very useful voice that was heard. And then finally, of course, in these particular times, I think it was very helpful for the board, the school board, to have been the first body and folks that voted 4 years ago to be the first elected body that elected a Hispanic person to a seat. And I think that that was historic for us and historic for the community, and I think particularly all the political issues that have arisen regarding immigration and what have you. It was a very moving evening when indeed we read that resolution in 3 different languages at the encouragement of Mr. Manera. So a voice that will be missed, but as we know, he'll be serving our kids.
Yeah, I hopefully Mr. Monero is watching, so he can hear our accolades, because I think, like you're saying, he's been such an advocate for all children, but a fierce advocate for kids and families who are English language learners and who are recent immigrants to our country. And he also helped push us to think about how to expand our community learning centers. And they're already such a centerpiece of our district, but really pushing us to think about how we can even better serve our communities. And while we will no longer be sitting in these seats, we know we'll still be working alongside Mr. Manera in the community as we all do this work. So really just wanted to make sure that we were able to publicly thank him.
Nice. Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Ms.
Aye.
Ms. Fulton?
Aye.
Mrs. Hoffman?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Timmons?
Aye.
President Copeland-Dansby?
Aye. I would like to present the next resolution, which is a resolution recognizing my friend, board member Elisa Hoffman, and I will read it. And we've promised to keep ourselves together tonight.
You did. She did.
Right. Whereas in November 2013, Elisa Hoffman was elected to the Board of Education, serving a total of 4 years from 2014 until 2017. And whereas Mrs. Hoffman has been working in education for over 20 years with a focus on the problem of how to ensure all children receive an excellent education, and believes deeply that every child in every neighborhood deserves to attend an outstanding neighborhood school. And whereas her commitment to academic achievement led her to serve from 2014 through 2017 on the Student Achievement Committee, whose major tasks were to review issues and proposals relating to program study, curriculum and instruction, and human resource issues. And whereas Elisa Hoffman also served on the Policy Committee from 2014 through 2017, chairing the committee in both 2015 and 2016, whose responsibilities included review of district policy and procedure revisions and updates in accordance with state law. And whereas her skills were recognized by her appointments to the Art Advisory Board, Preschool Promise, and Cincinnati's Preschool Promise Conference Committee. And whereas the children of Cincinnati Public Schools are the recipients of Mrs. Hoffman's passion for her children, commitment to community service, and dedication to quality education for all children. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Cincinnati Board of Education expresses its deep appreciation to Elisa Hoffman for her invaluable contributions to the education of the children of Cincinnati. And be it finally resolved that the Cincinnati Board of Education extends to Elisa Hoffman warm wishes for continued good health, happiness, and success in her future endeavors. And so I present this resolution as read and presented. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion or comments? Ms. Jones.
I could not go beyond this night and this meeting without expressing a really personal and heartfelt thank you for Lisa. And I know I'm telling my age, but I'm old enough to be her mother. But having said that, I never got too old to learn, and I learned a lot from this lady who so graciously passed the baton of the policy committee leadership to me and offered her assistance and her support throughout. And the one thing that I really, really appreciate about Elisa, which I think is very important on a board or any kind of group, is her extreme attention to detail.
Whoa.
And the passion that accompanies that when she really, really wants to make her point. And the thing that makes that a strong quality is it would be easy to glaze over things if you don't have somebody who keeps you focused on those details. And that's a skill that I find myself practicing, and I still miss the target sometimes, but I really appreciate that about you, Elisa, and I will miss working with you on this board.
Other board members, comments, questions? Yes?
Yeah, one thing that's missing that was really instrumental that you brought to this board, Elisa, was your advocacy for improvements in our hiring practices to make sure that we hire the best talent possible, and that's made such a difference in our staffing. And I know that was a real passion of yours. So, you know, if we can add that as an addendum, I think that's a really important part of your body of work with us. And also, thank you for being a sounding board for me, because I'm one of those people that tend to be out there. And as Ms. Jones said, your attention to detail is not to be surpassed, and you were able to help me focus a great deal and actually help some of my ideas crystallize with your input, and I really appreciated that. So you will be missed, and thank you for all you've done for our children and for us.
I like to say
Mr.
something.
Timmons?
Yes, I haven't really known Lisa that long, but for the time I've been here, I really appreciate you reaching out to me, trying to help me out and kind of show me the way. And just a little time I've been around you, I really appreciate you, and good luck to you. Right on.
Ms. Bolton?
Yeah, ditto to everything that's been said. Of course, I often describe her as a dog with a bone. She is so determined, no matter what. And I appreciate that, because there's that tenacity has gotten us through some very major strategic and politically difficult decisions. And regardless of the reaction, regardless of all the effort and the weight that goes with that, your tenacity and your commitment to getting the job done, but more particularly for the right reason. And I feel strongly that this board's major hallmark over the last couple of years, and certainly during your term, has been the equity piece. And I was reminded of it again in student achievement when we were talking about enrollment at Spencer and Cheviot, and even the date and time of when students' families were notified as to whether or not they would qualify. Based upon that date and time, it would be possible that some CPS families wouldn't have the opportunity, but those people that were able to have private testing would already have received that information and already enrolled. So your value is not just your tenacity and the dog with the bone and the attention to detail, but that you can see the big piece and more particularly figure out all the small things that really aren't that small that would stop us from getting to the big place. So appreciate your work and look forward to hearing from you. And I'm also going to miss somebody that cries as much as I did. There she goes, that I'm going to go to. So great, and thank you also for sharing your family with us all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Lisa and I met when we were campaigning 4 years ago, and we didn't know each other. We come from very different places, and I just really appreciate what we've been able to conquer together and getting elected first and foremost, and our work and learning together. And I'm not going to use the dog with the bone analogy. I am going to use the tear analogy, because we both do this often. But just your tenacity to want what's right for everybody. It's just amazing to me. And it's evident in your family and your kids. And I just think it's just so amazing that, you know, a person who doesn't look like the great majority of the body of our students, who really cares so much. And I just really appreciate it. I can't wait to see what you're going to do next. And I told Elisa literally 24 hours ago, and she is not off the hook, that we expect to see you out there and in committee and every place else. And so I wish you the very, very best. And I'm looking forward to us continuing to keep in touch. So I'm going to pass this beautiful resolution down to you. and ask you if you have any words that you'd like to add.
I do. I texted Erica last night and was like, I got a lot I want to say. And apparently, like my daughter, if you give me a microphone, I'll speak into it. So I wanted to just start by thanking the CPS community who trusted me to take on this role. It's been such an honor to represent our community, and I'm grateful to have had a seat at this table. I also want to thank my colleagues on this board. We have been through a lot of life together over the last 4 years. You know, when I was sitting down to think about it, I realized we've had a board member get married, we've had 2 board members have babies, we've had 3 grandchildren born. My kids started CPS, we had godchildren start CPS, grandchildren start CPS.
Graduates.
We had a graduate of CPS. Great-grandchildren start CPS. Yeah, and we lost one of our friends and fellow board members in Chris Nelms. That's a lot of big life stuff that brought us together, not just as colleagues in this work, but as people, and people who really care for each other. And Chris was so important to this board and this community in so many ways, but the way that he modeled how to actively listen to each other and how important it is to be able to disagree with an idea while still respecting and valuing the person really set a tone for our board. And we all brought very different perspectives to our conversations, which can be difficult. But what we also brought was a respect for each other. And we aren't always perfect, we weren't always perfect, but we really worked hard to listen and learn from each other before we made any of those big decisions that we were talking about. We agreed early on that we weren't going to be a board that counts to 4, that we were instead going to do the hard work of listening and compromise. And in the last 4 years, almost every single vote that this board has taken has been unanimous. And that's not because we always agree with each other. Anyone who's been to any of our meetings has heard our pretty vigorous conversations at times. But it's really because we got there because we were willing to compromise if it meant moving the work forward for our kids. And if I can give any advice to the new board members, it would be that, to do the hard work of listening, talking, and compromise, because at the end of the day, it's not about you, right? It's not about any one of us. It's about all 7 of us coming together and coming to decisions that are best for our kids. And, So the work of this board has really centered around how to build a more equitable and inclusive district where every student, every family, and every staff member feels valued, and where all of our students can thrive. And I was proud to chair the policy committee when we wrote that policy, and where this board unanimously passed one of the first equity policies in the country. And to us, when we talk about equity, we know that if we want equity in outcomes, we have to have equity in access and opportunities, that the achievement gaps we see are a function of opportunity gaps, and that it's our job to work with our administration to identify what those opportunity gaps are and then how we're going to fill them. And we have so many examples of that work. From our littlest people, like we heard tonight, where with the overwhelming support of our community and this innovative partnership with our community providers, we've dramatically increased equity and access to high-quality preschool. And on the other side of the spectrum with our high school students, we've gone from only a few high schools offering AP courses to every high school offering access to that rigorous coursework. And we cannot talk about equity and opportunities without talking about Vision 2020 and the opportunities that it's providing. Our principals and teachers have the opportunity to bring programming to their schools that aligns with their community's vision for their neighborhood school. And teachers have the opportunity to receive the kind of professional development that significantly improves their teaching and their kids' learning. And our kids get the opportunity to deeply engage in their learning with everything from bringing chickens home, like we heard about at our last board meeting, which was quite possibly the most adorable presentation ever given to a school board, to learning 3D printing and having master artists come to their classrooms or getting the chance to do a Shark Tank opportunity. And those academic results that were shared at the last board meeting for the first group of Vision 2020 schools are incredible. And so we can see our achievement increasing dramatically with increased equity and opportunity. And none of this success happens without the thoughtful, passionate people who work here in the Ed Center and at all of our schools. And when I visited schools, I met principals whose love for their school community was just so apparent. Like Mr. Grant at Westwood, where he wanted to go into every single classroom on my tour with him, but before he would open a door, he'd be like, "This is the best third grade teacher you've ever seen," or like, "You've never seen a fifth grade teacher like this before." And the reciprocation of that love was, you'd see it everywhere you went, where every 2 steps a kid was jumping out of line to give him a hug and then jumping back in line. Or his staff members would stop us just to tell me how much they appreciated his leadership. And I saw teachers like the biology teacher at Hughes High School, whose classroom is crawling, like literally crawling with life. There are birds chirping and lizards crawling and fish swimming in every corner of his classroom. And when I asked him about it, he said it all started his first year teaching, when he realized that he's teaching biology, the study of life, and the only living things in his classroom were him and his kids. And now, everywhere you turn, it's a biology lesson. And I think about people like the crossing guard at my kid's school, where she keeps a wad of $1 bills in her pocket, and when she finds out it's a kid's birthday, they get a $1 birthday dollar from Miss Alice. And our kids feel this love from our CPS community, from our crossing guards and our teachers and our principals and from everyone they encounter. At the end of last school year, I asked my own kids, who were twin second graders at the time, if they were excited for summer vacation. And they told me no, that they wished summer vacation was like spring break, where they got a week off and then could go back to school because they loved their teacher and their classmates so much. And it's not just my kids. I ran into one of my son's friends at school on Friday and asked him if he was excited for winter break, and he told me no. He said, "I love my school. I wish I could come here every day." And, I know that that is one of our superintendent's goals, is to have a happy culture at CPS. And, where staff members are happy because they feel valued and challenged and supported, and that their happiness builds happy schools because happy kids can learn. And we know that we're not where we want to be yet, but with the board supporting Superintendent Mitchell's vision and her leadership, we're moving, and we're moving with urgency and purpose in the right direction. And every board builds off the work of previous boards, so I look forward to seeing this work continue to move forward with the incoming board. And I also want to thank all of the people who served in this role before me, who set us up for these successes. And finally, the back of our nameplate says, "Turn on your microphone." That's not just an important instruction for elected officials. Every one of us has a voice. And especially in today's environment, it's important for all of us to turn on our microphones, to use our voices, to get loud and stay loud. So while I won't be staying in this seat, my microphone will stay on. I'll continue to be an advocate for our kids and a champion for CPS. Thank you.
Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Hoffman?
I think I have to abstain on this one.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Timmons?
Aye.
President Cook-Agansky?
Yes. Superintendent Mitchell, do you have a report?
Just a very brief one. Although many of the kids may not be happy that there's a winter break, today marks the first day of the winter break. And we just want to wish our employees, our families, our kids, and our parents a very happy, safe winter break. It is much, much deserved, and we will see you in 2018.
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve the revised recommendations of the superintendent?
So moved.
Any discussion?
Second.
I'm sorry, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a
Yes.
question, just a question. I wasn't sure what a, gosh, where is it? Transition? Where did I find it? Oh, on page 2 of the previous one, maybe not the revised. What is a transition coordinator? It's an additional assignment for somebody. Transition from to where?
So when students turn 14,
Yeah.
they work with a transition coordinator, so they work through their transition through the high school years to post-graduation.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. And then also on page 3, where we have Brad Gerard receiving some additional hours, I think that's great. He probably may even deserve more than that, but I would just like to start to put it out there that that magnificent building of SCPA and the incredible amount of rental use and use throughout the years. I know I say this about every year, but that building also needs some time to breathe, and we ought to start building in a way of figuring out how to give it a rest occasionally, especially some of its facilities over time, and it might not be a bad idea to start to figure out. I know we depend upon our supporters for raising great sums of money, but a lot of that stuff is stuff that probably has to be seen as part of our general fund as well. So he's there helping on the renting and helping on maintaining the facilities and preparing the facilities. Plus, it's not too early to start to wonder if SCPA needs even additional facilities as they expand in their strategic plan that we've heard about and read about. So it's a magnificent crown jewel, if you will, for real, and the gateway to the arts community. But we need to maybe start figuring out how to help that building, and giving this amount of money to Brad is a great idea, and appreciate his work.
Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Bates. Ms. Bolton.
Aye.
Mrs. Hoffman.
Aye.
Ms. Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Timmons.
Aye.
President Copeland Dansby.
Aye. Do I have a motion to approve the report of the treasurer?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Wagner,
I'm
please
proud of
call
that.
the roll.
And without Hoffman here, you better watch
Right.
out. I may be talking twice as much.
Oh, Lord.
These meetings could get very long.
Did you have anything to add, Treasurer Wagner?
I was so into preparing for a question, I missed who did the motions.
Ms. Bates.
And then I
And
seconded.
Ms. Hoffman.
Was there something that we needed to ask you about?
Right.
Did you sneak something through?
Very nice day today.
Please call the roll, Ms. Wagner.
Mrs. Bates.
Aye.
Ms. Bolton.
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Timmons.
Aye.
President Copeland Dansby.
Aye. I think we have some inquiries and updates. Ms. Jones.
Okay. As I was preparing for this meeting this weekend and looking at the information in the packets, and noticed that we had our chart in there that helps us organize our work for next year, and I started thinking about a couple of recommendations or things that I thought I'd bring forward to the board for discussion and possible consideration. So on the reference form, we added that the committee we didn't add it, it was already on there for PPE. And I remember at the last board retreat, we talked about, but we didn't make a decision about us reviving that committee. And so one of the ideas in that I had, and I think we probably need to make a decision is, whether or not we should make that another formal committee of the board. So that's one thing.
Which
And
committee?
The PPE.
Okay.
The second item is with the ad hoc committee, and I didn't have a chance we didn't talk about this at our ad hoc committee meeting, but this is a committee, ad hoc means you do your work and then it goes away. Well, the work of the ad hoc committee never went away. And it
We
didn't,
had a good time working together.
that's
I think.
because we had talkers in the group, but the work,
Same too.
but the work of the committee.
Quiet one.
Oh, okay. But the work of the committee was so important, and it's important because it really helped bring focus to what the board it was to do in its strategic planning effort, and also in terms of board development. And so I wanted to put out there the possibility for us to consider making that a formal committee, maybe calling it, because it can't be ad hoc, because it doesn't go away, but really because it focused on board strategic planning and board development, to make that a formal committee that meets just like all the rest of our committees. The work is needed. I think that it would add value to our focus on strategic planning, and also in helping us do some self-evaluation. It would mean that a couple of people maybe might have to work in 3 committees, but I think that that's I think that that's doable, and I think that that's probably desired. The Strategic Planning and Board Development Committee wouldn't necessarily require or expect an administration, liaison role, because it's solely focused on board work, although they might use them for resources, use them as resources. But also thinking about PPE and the important work that committee does, and I know we talked about in our discussion at the retreat that this is the full work of the board, but all of the work that we do is the full work of the board, and we do our work through the committees. Yeah. So I would think that it might require just a little bit of restructure to make it a formal committee and figure out how that committee operates. So I'm bringing that up for discussion as a couple of ideas that we might pursue in helping us better organize our work next year.
Comments? Questions?
I think it's a reasonable thing to think about, but I think it should be the new board that decides it based upon how they want to proceed. I think we can advise them that this is what we may believe would be useful. I know that at least one of the new board members, and kind of a second one, has talked about not ad hoc, but a strategic planning committee for the board, meaning that, does the district have a strategic plan? We know we've got great administration efforts in that direction. So I think they'll come in with some ideas as to what to do. I think ad hoc has served a tremendous purpose.
Absolutely.
And it was needed greatly to kind of reshape and reform. But I would say let's have this discussion with the new board members, with their efforts to decide. I still have difficult memories regarding PPE, because the problem with the PPE with just 3, especially after the election results that we've had, I think it's even more crucial that the whole board be engaged in that. And I think that's more of a sign of a need to isolate at time, when indeed we do in these evening meetings, as well as in the 11 o'clock meetings that start in January, actually isolate time for public engagement, whether it's about budget or whether it's about strategic planning or whatever. But I think the suggestions you make are good, and I would just like to have the new board kind of decide that. Is kind of quote so that's a Susan Cranley thing in my memory. Wait for the new board to decide it, because they're going to have to live with it. And then the Eileen Cooper Reed idea, meaning every time there's a new board, there are new gifts that people have, and new strengths and new interests. So as we shape that board, I think it'd be good to raise this issue with the new members, and the rest of us that are be hanging around instead of leaving us.
Yeah. Ms. Bates.
And really, there's no reason that we shouldn't proceed with what we have, and then at the 20th of the retreat on the 20th, discuss these very issues, and then see what kind of a agreement we come to. There's, this isn't set in stone. We would have to develop additional charters, as we do with the current structures, and we don't really have those charters in place yet. So there's a little bit more work to be
Yes.
done, but it's something that we can discuss and see if we want to further with the new people.
Yeah. I would just say, I would be okay with that. I would rather, if we're gonna wait till the new board comes on, I would rather, take some time in the first meeting that we have to put it out again as for discussion in our regular meeting, because I think our agenda for the retreat is already jam-packed. And so it's going to be hard to kind of squeeze in a full discussion. So hopefully we can set the stage for that discussion, and maybe by the time the retreat rolls around, we'll be ready to kind of decide and work to put something in place. But
Well, I agree with you related to the need for ad hoc to not be ad hoc, but to be something else that moves forward. And I can't imagine the two new board members not supporting that. As it relates to PPE, we had that discussion, I can't remember the exact date, but it's been a month,
it was at
probably,
the
several
last
meetings ago.
retreat.
Oh, it was at the retreat. We said at that time that we were interested in that being a standalone committee again, and we've passed those minutes. So I don't know.
Yes, we did. It was, we did write it, I think we did write it into the
did.
minutes, but I'm pretty sure we did. We had a,
As a decision, it was a discussion.
As a discussion, yeah, like, I don't know that of course,
didn't
we
make
didn't
it.
take a vote.
Right.
I don't know that we would vote. I don't know how we would do that.
We would have to vote on it, just like we vote on the membership of those committees.
True.
So,
To reinstate a already developed board committee. So, I don't know.
I know that very few boards in this country use the committee structure. It just doesn't work for them. And for whatever reason, it works for us. And I'm reluctant, and we have to think about this further, and maybe we can do away with one of the committees we already have, or combine some functions. But I'm thinking that if we do continue to expand, we may cause the board to, not work together as well, because different people are doing so many different things. To bring it all together may kind of be the tipping point, and this structure with the number of committees we've had seems to have worked, and adding two might not be in the best interests of the board. So we need to discuss that a little bit further, and also, maybe we can combine, I'm just throwing this out, we can combine policy and strategic planning, for instance, instead of having it two separate functions. So I think instead of adding, we need to look at, what the work really is and how it relates to other work we're currently doing, and then decide from there how we're going to proceed.
Yeah, I like the idea of maybe combining some efforts so that we're not spreading thin. I don't know which they would be.
Right.
But we're not adding two, we're adding one, because in the time that I've been here, we've always had a PPE committee. It was only in last year where I completely disagreed with that decision to move PPE from a standalone committee. And I'll tell you, and I don't know about anybody else in this room, but having spent some very rigorous time on the ground during this past campaign season, the community is irate about our community engagement. I think we have a very opportune time to turn that around, in that we have the amazing Lauren Worley on staff with us now. So I'm being really serious. Yeah. And an engaged community that wants to be engaged, and some super things going on related to the academic achievement of our students. So it would be in our best interest, in my opinion, to concentrate some efforts on involving and engaging the community in ways that we haven't before. You might be aware that Ms. Worley has put together a different structure than we're used to seeing in that department. And I'm sorry, y'all changed the name. I can't remember what it's called. Strategic. There you go. See, it's called engagement. And even have new hires, I think, or people that, recruitment that she's working on to fill these pockets. So I'm going to strongly support moving forward with PPE as a standalone. That whole, we'll do it on Wednesdays, we can't do it on Wednesday. And we're doing it on Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. where most of the community is not available. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I've been a part of it, so.
Yeah, I think you made the case to wait for the new board to decide that, but I think you made the case too that it needs to be a full board effort. What we didn't say that it has to be that 11 o'clock time. Matter of fact, in the minutes and the notes, we suggested that evenings, some of these evening meetings, when indeed the public is available to come, could be suggested, so it wasn't just then.
Of which we never did.
Which, well, we haven't done the 11 o'clock, we also haven't done ACES, there's a lot of things we haven't done. With all the good things we have done, we've had some shortcomings, and that's one of them. But I feel really strongly that part of what's been wrong in engagement is that we have a new administration that's much more interested in engagement of the community. We have structurally financed and peopled and hired, by the good graces of the superintendent, waiting for the best to come along. We've now got some folks, and we are now resourcing the kind of engagement opportunities that we need to have. And I just think that there are a lot of things we've started to address. But my bad memory of PPE certainly is not in the most recent years, but earliest on when it was created, it became a separate board effort, and it started to have multiple jurisdictions, and people started to think that those three people were the board members you had to engage. Our board as a whole has to have a high profile.
Well, you know, I liken that to the work of the audit committee, where the audit committee, in my opinion, you know, wasn't appointing folks in a fair and equitable way. We went back, we rewrote the charter. We now just put forth tonight 4 amazing people to serve. So in my mind, you know, to help support what you're saying and to make sure that doesn't happen again, we need to look at the charter and rework the charter.
Well, the facet charter.
That's exactly what I'm referring to. Absolutely. Yes.
Can I just add that I think we're all on the same wavelength. It's a matter of what's the process, how we make that decision. But when I look at this, there's a lot of overlap in terms of what PPE would do, and you know, and having Lauren here now, I think is extremely helpful to that process. But the former what we're calling ad hoc committee, I think, you know, I wasn't on the campaign trail, but I too heard from the community when I was out at some of these forums about the lack of engagement. And when I think about board strategic planning, I mean, that folds into the board strategic planning process. So there is a lot of opportunity there to blend the board, this new committee, formerly ad hoc, with every committee that we have. See, when we say full board work, that's hard for me to think about because all of it's full board work.
Yeah.
So, it's just how you deliver, you know.
So I agree that we're all on the same wavelength somewhat. So we probably should move to assignment, once we're done with any other inquiries update, make an assignment to this so that, you know, maybe you can put some summary around some framework as to what you were referring to.
Sure.
when you called it strategic planning and board development, as well as, you know, some of the ideas that Ms. Bolton raised that were challenges with a standalone PPE to ensure that doesn't happen again, as well as any opportunities or ideas about combining things so that we have on paper, because we have new board members coming, but they don't know we're in such a great place. You guys got to know that. And we don't want to lose that. We just want to build on that. So I think it's up to us to write these things down, along with what the current standing definition is of each of our committees, to ensure that those things are still the same. You know, there is a written description of PPE. Is that what we're trying to do, or is it something different? You know, I don't see strategic planning and PPE together. I'm going to stand very firm on that.
Not together, but a lot
or
of
combined. No, I don't.
I said policy, not.
No, that was her.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
And to not get off the different wavelength, because I think we were on the same wavelength, I can actually see where a strategic planning committee does do some of the ad hoc
Right.
piece that you're talking about.
Yes.
And if part of that strategic planning is really around our greatest weakness, which we've now perceived, which is engagement, and the equity analysis, there's a way that maybe as we think about this in preparation for the new board to come in, we could figure out the possibility of another committee to address those needs.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna suggest that we, have a pretty tight time frame around this, or we could be talking about this as 365 days from now.
And if we're talking about PPE and we're truly talking about public partnership and engagement, I'm not sure that a committee of 3 board members represents that. So we may want to think of a totally different structure and
Like
have it.
audit.
Have advisory, have representation from LSDMCs, from,
I think we have to.
PTAs,
We
from
have
parents for
to.
public schools, from, whatever. So
Yes.
I'm not sure that I'm ready to appoint 3 people to a new
I think that's a
committee.
good idea.
So.
Yes. Okay. Any other inquiries or updates? I do have a question. So we have before us this 2018 Board of Education Organization form, and we have sent this to new folk. I just want to make sure that we have included every committee or grouping or whatever. Traditionally, we had not had everything listed. Like I'm seeing here, discipline committee, and then so on and so forth. Like we don't even have that anymore. But I was wondering about adding preschool promise, workforce development, and if there are others.
There are other appointments too, but they aren't necessarily
Right.
appointments that we do generate. But I think you're right, and I mentioned that to staff, that it would be good to have a complete list of
Yep.
all the responsibilities that people have. Even something like, okay, if you're on finance, you're also on the audit committee.
Right.
If staff can really put a full list together, I think that we should send that new list out to the new members and to ourselves as well. And
Right. Well,
not include Ms. Hoffman.
I'm going to include Ms. Hoffman anyway. Just so you know, that list got sent ahead of me because I guess somebody asked for it or something. My intent was to ensure that all of these things were listed before we sent it out, number one. And then number two, to put a deadline on it. So we can't wait until, when are we together? January 8th? To get this back. We need this sooner than later. So the memo didn't ask for a date.
Be another packet this week, or even though we have a meeting or other
No, so
communications?
when we get to assignments, I'm gonna straighten all this out, if that's okay. Okay? But my inquiry, my question was, do we want to list? So I think what we're saying is we're gonna assign to get a whole listing of every appointment or place we need to be or what have you. All right? Any other inquiry or update? Okay, so assignments. The first assignment was we are looking for some clarification related to the enrollment outside of the home school for homeless children. We just want to be clear on that. We don't need a presentation. We don't need anybody doing a whole bunch of extra work. Just shoot us a paragraph.
Well, it's on our agenda as an
Oh.
ongoing issue. So it's ongoing, yeah.
So will it come to
policy.
your committee?
Yes.
Okay, so good. It'll come to there. I just want clarification because I can't speak to it, so I don't know. And I just want to make sure that group of children have what they need to have related to their home school or any other choice that's right for them while they are in a challenging situation.
Got it.
Okay. Number two, we are assigning to, I guess, Ms. Davis to help us understand a complete listing of appointments, assignments, places we need to be. But I am asking that we include preschool promise and workforce development on this sheet, for starters. If there are others that I'm remiss to mentioning, because the first thing I went to check was CRC, but we do have CRC listed. Or beyond, activities beyond the classroom, we do have listed. All right.
We no longer do Cheviot tax review because Ms. Wagner does that. and discipline
Discipline
committee
doesn't
doesn't even
exist.
exist anymore.
I'm also going to ask for, in this assignment, well, I guess I can't do that quite yet, never mind. What was the third thing?
The assignment to put a framework on this
Yes.
suggestion about the two committees.
So if,
I was just getting ready to say, I think ad hoc should convene one more time this year before Elisa gets away.
it's up to you guys.
I'd like to make that, well, you have to make it, but,
No, you can make.
okay, I'd
Well,
like to
just-
make an
Yeah,
assignment
to yourself.
to myself and other members of the now ad hoc committee that we meet one more time to put a framework on this assignment.
And if I can,
About the two
expound on that, just for clarification, because we don't have a lot of time.
No.
And I'm telling you guys, I'm so on fire. My microphone is on, Ms. Hoffman. Not this microphone, but my microphone is on. So when we get into the new year, we just don't have a lot of time to waste. We gotta go.
We're ready.
Right? People are counting on us. So with that assignment, I want to make sure that we have the current definitions of each committee as listed in our bylaws or wherever they are, including PPE, as well as some of the suggestions that Ms. Bates mentioned about combining, even if it's nothing more than what she just said here tonight. Your definition of where you think ad hoc needs to evolve.
Got it.
Is that right? Is that right? Is that it? I feel like I want to put our hands down. 1, 2, 3, activate. It's time to go to work. Okay, anything else on assignments? Having no other business, we are adjourned. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa,
Happy
Happy Festivus, Feliz Navidad. I shouldn't have said anything.
See you in the morning. I have a big packet of signatures.
No
So
worries,
if-
somebody told me I needed to sign
Okay,
something.
if you'd
Let me
rather
give them
take
their
it
Christmas.
home, that's fine, whatever you
I'm gonna sign it right now. No, I have one. I'm trying to go in hibernation for the holiday. What is it?